I used to think silence meant peace, but in my family, it meant I didn't matter. One Father's Day, I handed my dad a handmade card, glitter, a poem, even a smiling grill, and he didn't even look at it. 5 years later, I handed him something else, an envelope. Inside was proof that the company he worked for now belonged to me. The same daughter he once said never finishes anything. I spent years walking dogs after school, skipping lunches, learning to code at night, just to buy a sketchbook he said I'd never use. If you've ever sat quietly while your siblings got all the praise, this story is for you. You'll learn that healing doesn't always come from applause, but sometimes from building something so solid it speaks for itself. When I said, "You work for me now," no one laughed. Just silence and a pair of grill tongs hitting concrete. If your family stopped seeing you a long time ago, don't wait for them to notice. Watch this story before another year disappears into silence. Before we dive into the story, if you're enjoying these meaningful stories, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss out on more. Now let's start the story together. I used to think silence meant peace. In our house, it meant you didn't matter. That Sunday smelled like charcoal and overcooked ribs. The backyard buzzed with laughter, the kind that bounces off lawn chairs and floats into the heat like helium. Father's Day always looked perfect from the outside. Paper plates loaded with corn, Caleb flipping burgers like a pro, Ethan spraying the hose across the lawn, making Mom squeal. Inside, I sat at the dining table, carefully gluing the last swirl of glitter onto my Father's Day card. I'd written a poem, hand-traced the letters, and even drew a little grill with smiling steaks. When I gave it to Dad, he didn't even turn his head, just muttered, before folding it shut and setting it beside his iced tea. 2 minutes later, Caleb dropped a store-bought mug that read, "We're one Dad," onto the table. Dad laughed, genuinely. "Classic Caleb," he said, raising the mug like a trophy. During dinner, Dad asked Ethan about his soccer scores. Caleb got praised for acing his math final. I passed the ketchup, refilled drinks, and waited for someone to ask me something. They never did. After the plates were cleared, I waited for the right moment. "Dad," I started quietly, "there's this sketchbook online. It's $39. It's really good quality." He didn't even look up. "You'll quit halfway like everything else." My face burned. I didn't cry. I just nodded and cleared the table. That night, I made a decision. By Monday, I had posted handwritten flyers around the neighborhood offering to walk dogs after school. I stopped buying snacks from the cafeteria. While others had fries and chocolate milk, I drank water and chewed on carrots from home. Each week, I slipped a few crumpled bills into a shoebox under my bed. By late August, I had enough. I clicked "Buy now" with my hands shaking and stared at the confirmation email like it was a college acceptance. The sketchbook arrived 3 days later. I waited until the house quieted. My brothers were gaming, Mom folding laundry, Dad watching golf. I pulled out the sketchbook, peeled off the plastic, and opened to the first page. "I won't quit," I wrote. Just 3 words in the center. Not big, not loud, but permanent. I started sketching. Shaky lines, unsure strokes. The pages felt heavier than they looked, like they knew how much they cost me. The glitter from the card weeks ago was still stuck under my nails. I guess I hadn't washed it all off. From the hallway, Dad's voice drifted in. "Turn the lights off when you're done." He didn't ask what I was doing. Didn't care. But for the first time, I didn't need him to. The day I turned 19, I signed a lease under a name no one in my family had ever said out loud. Rachel Whitmore. The landlord barely blinked, just handed me the keys, smudged with old brass and dried tape, and moved on to the next line in the contract. No congratulations, no warnings, just a transaction. But to me, it felt like a rebirth. The apartment was barely 200 square feet, tucked between a print shop and a shuttered bakery. The blinds clacked in the wind, and the air smelled like someone else's microwave popcorn. But for the first time, everything inside belonged to me. 3 boxes, a folding chair from a garage sale, and a drawer I labeled Projects with masking tape. "I'm just staying closer to campus," I'd told Mom over the phone. Technically true. Emotionally, galaxies away. My first meal there was peanut butter toast on a paper towel, eaten cross-legged on the floor. I hadn't bought a table yet, or curtains, or anything that made a home feel finished. But I wasn't chasing finish lines anymore. I was building from scratch. Days passed slowly, structured by light and library hours. I borrowed books on CSS and HTML, highlighting with a dull pencil. At night, I stared at a blank Google Doc, rewriting the same sentence. Affordable websites for local businesses. Then deleting it. One message changed everything. "Hey, saw your post. Need help on a project. You open to collab?" Jason Kim. I didn't know his face, but I recognized the tone. Direct, respectful, no small talk. We exchanged mock-ups and code snippets. He was scrappy, self-taught like me, and never once asked where I studied or what my GPA was. A few weeks later, Maya reached out. She ran a handmade baby blanket business from her garage and needed a checkout page that didn't crash. We spoke over Zoom, her toddler throwing toys in the background while she screen-shared PayPal errors. "I can't pay much," she said. "It's okay," I replied. "I'm just glad someone's asking me." Nights blurred into weeks. Burnt coffee and peanut butter became my routine. The folding chair creaked under me like it knew I wasn't done proving anything yet. And then it happened. Maya's payment arrived, $150, transferred through PayPal, marked paid in full. The invoice read, "To Rachel Whitmore." I stared at the name, my name, not the one I was born with, but the one I chose. Later that night, I pulled out the old sketchbook, the one that still smelled faintly of middle school glue and cheap glitter. Its pages were nearly full now, lines of code scribbled beside doodles and budgets. On the last page, I wrote, "Names can be inherited or chosen." It wasn't just a statement, it was a promise. My first real office had burnt coffee, mismatched chairs, and windows that stuck, but it had a door I could lock from the inside. Above the bakery on 5th Street, we could hear every tray hit the counter downstairs. The space was drafty, and the radiator clicked like it had something to prove. Still, that office smelled like progress. Old carpet, overused keyboards, and a hint of cinnamon rolls wafting in every morning. Jason took the desk by the window, mostly because it had the strongest Wi-Fi signal. Maya claimed the one near the heater and kept a rotating stash of almonds and deadline spreadsheets. I didn't assign roles. I just made sure our invoices were paid, our clients stayed happy, and our mission never blurred. Clarity, simplicity, trust. We weren't loud, but we moved fast. Within months, our little platform was being used by florists, tutors, even a mom-and-pop hardware store in Kalamazoo. No splashy ads, just word of mouth, honest builds, and quick bug fixes. "Rachel doesn't finish things," my dad once told a neighbor while adjusting the grill at a block party. I remembered it every weekend I chose debugging over brunch. Then came the email. Mr. Langston, trim gray hair, silk tie, not one wasted syllable, invited me to lunch at a quiet bistro near campus. We sat by the window. He ordered espresso. I didn't. Halfway through, he slid a folder across the table. No pitch, just data, charts, market gaps, and a single line circled in red. Anderson Systems, 10+ years in commercial IT, weak integration, lagging retention. My eyes froze on the name. Anderson, my father's employer. The same company where he spent a decade, quietly respected, slightly feared, and always too busy to notice what I was building. I didn't speak for a full minute. Langston didn't rush me. "I'll do it," I finally said, "but don't attach my name until everything is signed. Everything." He smiled, not surprised. "Thought you'd say that." After the meeting, I didn't tell Jason or Maya. I didn't need to. They saw the uptick in meetings, the new server access, the long nights spent with spreadsheets instead of code. Winter came early that year. On especially cold days, we wore gloves inside the office and wrote on whiteboards while sipping reheated coffee. But momentum kept us warm. One client turned into 3. 3 into 30. And behind the scenes, our platform was quietly replacing every tool Anderson's systems depended on. Langston called me the following March. "You're the majority shareholder now," he said. "Board signed off today." I nodded, standing by the same sticky window where I'd once taken calls about broken checkout carts. The radiator hissed like punctuation. That evening, I printed one copy of the final paperwork. I slipped it into a black envelope with gold trim, left over from Maya's wedding invites. In silver ink, I wrote 2 words across the front. Father's Day. The group chat lit up on a random Tuesday. Father's Day BBQ 4 p.m., same place. No greeting, no tag. Just a simple broadcast dropped into the same thread that had gone dormant for years. 5 years to be exact. 5 years of birthdays skipped, holidays muted, and milestones passed in silence. But this time, I didn't need an invitation. I had already prepared my reply, months in advance. Maya and I were sitting on a bench near the food trucks, plastic forks in hand, when my phone buzzed. The message floated above a half-eaten falafel bowl, blinking like a distant lighthouse. "Everything okay?" Maya asked, balancing her drink on her knee. I showed her the screen. She raised an eyebrow. "They still call it a group chat?" she said. "Looks more like a broadcast channel." I smiled dry. "I'll be there," I typed back. No one replied. Not Ethan, who'd sent the message. Not Caleb, who dropped a thumbs-up emoji moments later. Not even Marilyn, who hearted the message without looking to see who else was in the thread. That night, I reviewed the final integration documents. The last step of the acquisition had gone through cleanly. Legal, technical, financial, no gaps. Anderson's Systems was now folded neatly under the architecture I'd built. Line by line, dollar by dollar. It wasn't revenge. It was structure. The next morning, I walked into a downtown dealership and leased a black electric sedan. Sleek. Unbranded. Just enough curve to draw the eye, not enough to shout. My only real statement. Back at the office, I retrieved the envelope I'd prepared weeks earlier. Thick black paper, gold-trimmed. The same kind Maya had used for her wedding invites, now repurposed for something more surgical. On the front, I wrote in silver ink, "To Dad." Inside, the signed ownership documents. Proof. Closure. No manifesto, just the quiet weight of truth on heavyweight paper. I didn't tell Jason. He'd pieced together enough from our calendar. Didn't tell Maya either, though she caught the slight tremor in my hand when I poured cold brew that afternoon. "You good?" she asked. "Better than I expected," I said. The rest of the week unfolded like routine. Meetings. Debugs. Grocery runs. But under it all ran a quiet current. One I'd been preparing for since I was 12, silently clearing plates while my brothers were praised for existing. Saturday night came with a breeze through the window and the sound of soft jazz from the bakery below. I stood by my entry table, envelope in hand, letting the porch light flicker against its gold trim. This wasn't theater. I wasn't trying to make them understand. I just wanted it documented. I placed the envelope down, smoothed the corners, turned off the lamp, and slept like someone who'd already said everything she needed to. No one noticed the car until I stepped out of it. Black, clean, quiet, parked in front of the Whitmore house like it belonged, though it never had. The backyard buzzed with familiar chatter. Folding chairs scraped on pavement, someone opened a cooler, a cousin laughed too loud at a joke I didn't catch. I paused by the fence for a second longer than necessary. Then I walked in. The scent hit me first, mulch and lighter fluid and something sticky sweet from a store-bought cake. The same arrangement every year. Ethan tossing beanbags with someone's kid, Caleb holding court near the patio with a beer and startup jargon, and my father by the grill, tongs in hand like a scepter. He looked up, flipped a burger, smirked. "Well, look who finally decided to show." I gave a polite nod. "Good to see you too." Marilyn blinked twice before walking over. She hugged me like someone testing the temperature of a pool. "You look grown," she said. I thanked her. The silence that followed said the rest. I took a seat at the long table near the lemonade pitcher. Paper plates, plastic utensils, overdressed salads. Caleb was mid-story about some funding, round they'd nearly closed. Ethan chimed in with a plaque he'd won, Regional Salesperson of the Quarter. Gerald nodded along, content, a king surveying his minor empires. Someone raised a toast. I didn't catch who. To Dad, who raised leaders. Glasses clinked. Gerald lifted his, then glanced at me. And Rachel's still figuring it out, I guess. It landed lightly, like a joke, but the pause afterward was real. No one laughed. No one defended me. They never had. I placed my fork down. Actually, I said calmly, I brought you something. He raised a brow. Oh? I stood, walked out of the yard, back toward the car. I opened the passenger door and picked up the envelope from the seat, black with gold trim, heavy with intent. My heels clicked softly against the path back to the table. Every eye followed me now. I placed the envelope in front of him. Happy Father's Day, I said. He chuckled, skeptical. Caleb leaned in. Ethan took a sip and paused mid-swallow. Gerald opened the envelope slowly. The air shifted. I watched his eyes move line by line. First curiosity, then confusion, then silence. He blinked, reread. Caleb reached for the paper but didn't ask. Marilyn's hand gripped her napkin like it might float away. Ethan lowered his drink. The name on that memo? I said quietly. That's mine. Gerald looked up, but I wasn't staring him down. I wasn't performing. I was just stating facts. You work for me now, I added. No one spoke. No protests. Just the sound of wind moving through plastic flags in the yard and someone's toddler whining about juice in the background. I picked up my cup of lemonade and took a slow sip. Somewhere behind me, the grill hissed. Burgers overcooked. Tongs dropped to the concrete with a dull clatter. I didn't need applause. I didn't need them to understand. I just needed the truth to sit there, unmovable, undeniable in black and white on Father's Day. I didn't slam the door. I didn't even close it hard. I just left it open enough for them to see I wasn't staying. The drive back was silent, not out of spite, just stillness. I didn't turn on the radio, didn't check the rearview mirror. I already knew what was behind me. By the time I reached my apartment, the sun had dipped low enough to leave gold streaks across the floorboards. I slipped off my shoes, traded my blouse for an old t-shirt, and filled the kettle with water. While it boiled, I filed the acquisition papers into the cabinet labeled Legacy. Not business, not family, just legacy. I made tea, watered the plant in the window. The soil was dry, but it hadn't wilted. Neither had I. 3 unread emails waited in my inbox. The first was from a client. Feedback on the latest dashboard mock-up. The second, from Langston. Congrats, you did it. No one saw it coming. Let's talk next quarter. And the third, from my mother. Subject line. Was that really necessary, Rachel? No greeting, no sign-off. Just the echo of the question they'd been asking in some form or another since I was a child. I read it twice. Then I printed it and placed it in the same folder as the signed board approval and transfer memo. Let the record show. I had answered her. Just not in words she wanted. The apartment hummed with small life. The tick of the fridge, the steam from my mug, the low creak of floorboards warming in summer air. I changed the hallway light bulb that had gone out last week. Not out of urgency, just timing. It flickered once, then glowed steady. At the kitchen table, I opened a new notebook. First page, clean and silent. I wrote in ink, I'm here. Not waiting for anyone. Not proving anything. Not reliving the conversation. Somewhere, I imagined the envelope being passed around that backyard table. Someone pointing at a line. Someone else squinting. Gerald maybe shaking his head, maybe silent for once. Caleb saying something clever to fill the air. Ethan laughing, confused, my mother sighing. They could talk. But I wasn't listening. Some doors don't need to be slammed to be closed. They just need to be walked past, quietly, with purpose. That night, I didn't feel triumphant. I simply felt free. Sometimes the family we grow up with doesn't recognize who we become. But healing isn't always about fixing the past. It's about choosing peace over permission and planting roots where you're seen. Love, in its truest form, starts with listening, even if you're the only one doing it. If this story spoke to something in your own journey, I invite you to share your thoughts. Stories, after all, are how we remember we're not alone.